أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Verse number 127 of Surah An-Nisa. وَيَسْتَفْتُونَكَ فِي النِّسَاءِ قُلِ اللَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ وما يتلى عليكم في الكتاب في يتامى النساء اللاتي لا تؤتونهن ما كتب لهن وترغبون أن تنكحوهن والمستضعفين من الولدان وأن تقوموا لليتامى بالقسط وما تفعلوا من خير فإن الله كان به عليما. They seek your ruling concerning women. Say, Allah gives you a ruling concerning them. And what is announced to you in the book concerning girl orphans, whom you do not give what has been prescribed for them, and yet you desire to marry them, and about the weak among children, and that you should maintain the orphans with justice. And whatever good you do, indeed, Allah knows it. Well, at the beginning of Surah, we had quite a detailed set of rulings regarding women, regarding marriage, regarding orphans, regarding inheritance and things like that. And many of them were concerned with women. There's another question here which comes up. يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ. They ask your ruling. Now, Istifta is to ask an opinion or to ask a clarification, a fatwa. Fatwa or futya, both of them are the same, is a ruling which is provided, or an answer provided for a sort of complicated matter that people cannot by themselves know of it. And that's why when we ask fatwa from Maraja, we're not asking something easy, because they have to go and do research. And fatwa is an opinion based on research. If I quote the fatwa of another person, that is not the answer to an istifta. It is quoting another person's opinion, the result of another person's research. Now, in Anwar al-Tanzil, it gives a very concise definition of istifta and ifta. Istifta is to ask, fatwa, ifta is to produce and provide a fatwa. He says, al-ifta tabyinul mubham, is to clarify what is complicated, confused, because of course it needs some research, some deliberation to find out about it. In Majmu' al-Bayan, it says, هو تبيين المشكل من الأحكام, clarifying rulings which are difficult to understand. This is the meaning of fatwa, the meaning of ifta, and the meaning of istifta. Istifta is to ask for fatwa, ifta is to provide a fatwa. Now, when we hear, we see that it's mentioned, يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ فِي النِّسَاءِ, it doesn't mean they ask you to do research and provide an answer. They need some clarification. Now, this clarification may be about something which was not mentioned at the beginning of the surah, or it may refer back to those previous rulings which were mentioned, but they did not understand and digest it well. يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ فِي النِّسَاءِ. In the sabab al-nuzul of this verse, it is mentioned that Uyayna ibn Hisn came to the Prophet and said, you provided certain rulings with regards to women, girls, and even boys, children. أخبرنا أنك تؤتي الابنة النصف والأخت النصف. You said that we have to give half the share to a daughter or to a sister, and we know they cannot fight. They cannot be present in the battlefield. It is against all our custom to give inheritance to someone who cannot fight and protect the tribe and cannot earn ghanima and booties of war. It's only for those. So children are out, women are out, girls are out. Apparently, the verses at the beginning of the surah were such a surprise to the Muslim community who had certain traditions in this regard, that not only they could not digest it, but also they could not live up to it. And the Prophet and the closer companions maybe were advising them, Allah has given you a ruling and you have to act according to those rulings, but they couldn't actually, it was very difficult for them to digest it. So they came to the Prophet, as one instance is mentioned here, and said, these rulings are very different from what we have been practicing before. This is one possibility, that they are asking about the rulings at the beginning of Surah Nisa. Another possibility is that they are asking about certain rulings regarding polygamous relationship between a man and his wives, which comes in the subsequent verses. But most of the commentators have said that this is seeking clarification about those verses. And then Allah mentions other injunctions, gives other rulings to, in a sense, to complete the set of rulings about family relationship, men and women relationship, things like that. The interesting thing is that they were, in a sense, criticizing the Prophet about those rulings. And now they want clarification. And the next sentence says, قُلِ اللَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ. Allah is giving ruling regarding them. Regarding Nisa, isn't it? يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ فِي النِّسَاءِ. They are asking clarification about the rulings that you mentioned about women. Tell them, it's not me who is giving these rulings. That you come to me and criticize me that these rulings are quite against our customs. قُلِ اللَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ. Allah is giving you rulings. Now, there's quite a gap between this question and the verses at the beginning of the surah. We actually discussed many different things. In Al-Manar, he mentions that there are a few possible explanations for this gap in the discussion. The rulings were presented at the beginning of the surah, and now here again they are asking clarification. I just mentioned two of these possibilities that he has provided. He says that a detailed discussion of legal injunctions can be dry for most people if it is extended for long. So Allah has given some rulings, then moved into other matters, and then continued with the rulings about women. Of course, with a turning point, bringing in a question from some of the companions, and then continuing with the rulings about the women. This, he says, is one possibility. The other possibility is that assuming the apparent temporal gap between the revelation of these verses and the opinions given, it shows that the Muslims did not sufficiently practice those injunctions. And actually Allah had to somehow repeat them, re-emphasize them, as we see in these verses. So, وَلَلَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ, Allah gives you a ruling concerning 4 things here now. It is emphasizing the previous ones and giving an answer regarding the women as well, a new answer. So the 4 things that Allah gives an answer to is about women, which are the subject of the people's question. وَلِلَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ فِي النِّسَاءِ. And about what is announced to you in the book concerning girl orphans. وَمَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ فِي يَتَامَى النِّسَاءِ. Okay, it was read to you before in the book. This was quite clear, and Allah is emphasizing it again with of course, more detailed explanation. In the beginning of the surah, we had that if you fear that you cannot do justice about orphan girls, so marry other women. Do not try to marry orphan girls who are under your protection, or marry them off to your sons and things like that. And here gives an extra explanation about them, re-emphasizing the previous injunction. وَمَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ فِي يَتَامَى النِّسَاءِ اللَّاتِي لَا تُؤْتُونَهُنَّ مَا كُتِبَ لَهُنَّ وَتَرْغَبُونَ أَن تَنكِحُوهُنَّ. Those girls, those orphan girls, who you do not give what has been prescribed for them, whether in terms of inheritance, or if you want to marry them or marry them off to your sons or your relatives, you do not give them the prescribed mahr, which is for them because they don't have anyone to defend them. And yet, تَرْغَبُونَ أَن تَنكِحُوهُنَّ. Now, here we have a sort of grammatical discussion. Raghaba can have 2 meanings depending on the preposition which follows it. Raghaba an with ayn, raghaba an means disliked, turned away from something out of dislike. Raghaba fi means liked, desired. So raghaba an, raghaba fi. Now here we can say targhabuna an tankihuhun, targhabuna an nikahin, and targhabuna fi nikahin, fi an tankihuhun. Which meaning is intended here? Different commentators have provided different opinions, but I think both of them can be, Allah has purposefully left it vague to give both meanings. If you desire to marry them, then you have to give them their rights. You have to treat them like other women who have their family, who protect them. And if you don't like to marry them, do not keep them to devour their inheritance. So both of them, Allah has given you an injunction about them. فِي يَتَامَى النِّسَاءِ اللَّاتِي لَا تُؤْتُونَهُنَّ مَا كُتِبَ لَهُمْ. What is prescribed for them in the book, you do not give them. Although I had mentioned this before, and you desire to marry them, or you do not desire to marry them, in both cases, you have to give them their rights. And also, according to the question of the companion of Uyaynah ibn Hisn, who said, we only give inheritance to those who can fight and can acquire booties of war. Children, according to the custom, children who had not been mature enough to be present in a battle, they were also deprived of inheritance. So it is وَتَرْغَبُونَ أَن تَنْكِحُوهُنَّ وَالْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الْوِلْدَانِ. And we children, you have to give them their right, their share of inheritance as well. So you see, Allah, when they ask a question about women, Allah is giving, first of all, re-emphasizing what was there before and giving some ethical rulings. Why those who are weak should be deprived of inheritance. And then a very general ruling at the end, the fourth injunction, وَأَن تَقُومُوا لَلْيَتَامَى بِالْقِسْطِ. All these things that I mentioned about orphans can be somehow summarized in this ruling. You have to do justice to the orphans, especially orphan girls who are under your care, who are not able to protect themselves and what is prescribed for them. At the end of the verse, it says, وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِهِ عَلِيمًا. Whatever good you do, indeed Allah knows it well. This is relevant in the context of family affairs, certainly. I mean, if in the family there is an orphan girl or there is something between wife and husband, and they do not want it to, the news to break outside the family. But be careful, you may keep these injustices from the people, but you cannot hide it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you do good in the family, people may not know about it. You do good to your wife, you do good to an orphan who is under your care, and no one knows about it because it's inside the family, but Allah knows about it. This is probably the meaning which is intended from this last sentence of the verse. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِهِ عَلِيمًا. The following verse talks about and these are, of course, other fatwa or other clarifications or rulings regarding women, which has come after that istifta. It is actually dealing with certain rulings in the context of a polygamous family, a man and his wives. وَإِنْ امْرَأَةٌ 128 وَإِنْ امْرَأَةٌ خَافَتْ مِنْ بَعْلِهَا نُشُوزًا أَوْ إِعْرَاضًا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَنْ يُصْلِحَا بَيْنَهُمَا صُلْحًا وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ وَأُحْضِرَتِ الْأَنْفُسُ الشُّحَّ وَإِنْ تُحْسِنُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. If a woman fears from her husband misconduct or desertion, there is no sin upon the couple, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, upon the couple, if they reach a reconciliation between themselves. And reconciliation is better. The souls are prone to greed or self-interest. I will mention about the meaning of shuh later on, inshallah. But if you are virtuous and God-wary, Allah is indeed well aware of what you do. Again, because this is inside the family, Allah is talking about His knowledge about what goes inside the family. Now, this verse is a counterpart and complement to verse 431, which was about وَاللَّاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ. If you fear the nushuz, misconduct of your wives. Here it talks about misconduct of the husbands, which puts the wife in a very difficult situation. وَإِنْ امْرَأَةٌ خَافَتْ مِنْ بَعْلِهَا نُشُوزًا. As we discussed before, nushuz, misconduct, is refraining from the duties that a person has in the family, both spouses. Now here, because it's about misconduct of the husband, certainly it's not about beating or getting angry or things like that. It is about not fulfilling one's duties. Refraining from paying her nafaqah or other types of misconduct. This is nushuz. I'rad is milder, meaning paying less attention to the wife, spending less time with her, showing no affection towards her. This is i'rad. And nushuz, as I mentioned, nushuz may be abusing verbally as well. According to some commentators, in Tabrasi, Majmu' al-Bayan says, abusing verbally the wife is nushuz as well. So what should be done in this case? وَأَنَ امْرَأَةٌ خَافَتْ مِنْ بَعْلِهَا نُشُوزًا أَوْ إِعْرَاضًا. As I said, this is in the context of a polygamous family, as we will see in the next verse, but it may apply to a monogamous life as well. If this happens, there is no sin upon the couple to make a compromise, between themselves. فَلَا جُنَاهَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَن يُصْلَحَ بَيْنَهُمَا صُلْحًا وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. What does that mean? يُصْلَحَ بَيْنَهُمَا صُلْحًا. It means the wife may say that, okay, you're not giving me what I deserve because you don't like me and you want to divorce me, but I actually give away some of my rights so that we continue living with each other. You do not divorce me, because divorce is in the hand of the husband. You do not divorce me. I give, for example, I compromise with you that since you have more attention to your other wives, it doesn't matter. Let me attend to my children. As I said, this is in the context of a polygamous family. Let me attend to my children, and I don't want you to do justice, for example, in time or in nafaqah. I don't mind. We make a compromise because I fear that you may intend to divorce me, and I don't want to be divorced. This is the meaning of خافت من بعلها نشوزا. And this misconduct is because, for example, he's not very much willing to live with her, or i'rad's desertion. And Allah says, of course, in this case, the man has, for example, decided to divorce. It's better a compromise, not divorce. And it's better for the woman to give up some of her rights so that the marriage holds. As we have heard in the hadith, there is no lawful ruling more detested by Allah than divorce. So here, a soul, this compromise is khair. What actually is a deterrence about this soul? What prevents it is because وَأُحْضِرَتِ الْأَنفُسُ الشُّحَّ. The souls are prone to shuh. Shuh here in Ali Quli Qarai's translation is translated as greed. In some other translations, it has been translated as miserliness. However, because every soul, here says that every soul is prone to shuh. We may say shuh is self-interest. No one wants to give away their own interests, especially if that is something prescribed for them. That is their right. And here, neither man wants to give up his right of divorce, nor woman wants to give up her right of nafaqah and other things. And Allah says that you have to overcome this attitude of self-interest, the quality that Allah has put in our fitrah to protect ourselves. That's sure. But sometimes it's good to wave it away, like in the case of ithar. We have one other concept in Surah Al-Ma'arij, which Allah mentions that it is in the nature of human beings, and this is hulu'a. Inna al-insan khuliqa halu'a. He is created like that. Inna al-insana khuliqa halu'a idha massahu ash-sharru jazu'a wa idha massahu al-khayru manu'a. Indeed, man has been created halu. Okay, it's translated here as covetous. Anxious when an ill befalls him, and grudging when good comes his way, except the prayerful. Illa al-musalli. So this is the nature of man, which should overcome this nature. This nature is put there for protection, that man protect, human being protect their interests. But there are other things which may, in a sense, come into conflict with it, and sometimes we have to give it away. Like, for example, in the case of ithar, altruism, preferring others over one's own self, a person must put aside the shuh in this case, which is not a bad quality, looking after one's own interests, but here, in family matters, it is good to sometimes give up some of one's rights to keep the family together. وَأُحْضِرَتِ الْأَنفُسُ الشُّحَّ. And then it says, وَإِن تُحْسِنُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. If you do good and you are God-weary, Allah knows of it. Allah knows that you have sacrificed certain things for a better good. Allah knows of it. تَتَّقُوا وَتُحْسِنُوا. تُحْسِنُوا وَتَتَّقُوا. Do good and be God-weary. Be virtuous and be God-weary. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. In Tafsir al-Kabir, Fakhruddin Razi says that there are a few possible interpretations for this clause. وَإِن تُحْسِنُوا وَتَتَّقُوا. If you give your wives more than their right and refrain from diminishing from their dues, despite you having i'rad, despite you are not willing to live with them. This is tuhsinu wa tattaqu. Another possibility, if you treat them justly and refrain from unfair treatment such as misconduct or desertion, although the affection is not there. Asa an takrahu shay'an fahuwa khayrun lakum. Sometimes you dislike something, but it's much better for you. If you subscribe to the virtue of obeying God and refrain from His disobedience, then it is, of course, much better for you. The fourth possibility he mentioned is if the husband and wife both practice virtue and justice in spite of their strong self-interest, is strong shuh, then of course Allah is knowledgeable, knows of it. Actually, what justifies putting up with the hardship of virtue and God-wariness despite our instinctive inclination towards self-interest is the Quranic principle that you have to have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes things come your way that you do not like, as I mentioned. Asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum. If you put your trust in God, certainly you would be able to have taqwa, have ihsan, and know that inna Allah kana bima ta'maluna khabira. Allah knows what you do. The next verse talks about adala. This is very important. Keep in mind, the next verse talks about adala, justice between wives. A man has several wives, 2, 3, 4. That's the limit. And then the verse at the beginning of the surah said, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً. If you fear that you cannot do justice between them, then only one. And here it says, وَلَمْ تَسْتَطِيعُوا أَن تَعْدِلُوا بَيْنَ النِّسَاءِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتُمْ. You will not be able to be fair between wives, even if you are eager to do. Some commentators have said that this verse has abrogated the verse at the beginning of the surah. However, we have to discuss it and see whether that is a substantiated view or not. That view could be supported by argument from the Quran or not. Inshallah, in our next session. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.